The meeting room was buzzing with tension as executives flipped through their reports, unaware that a quiet woman in the corner would soon become the center of it all. She wasn't dressed in designer suits like the others. Her simple outfit made her almost invisible in the sea of power and prestige. But in just a few minutes, every eye in that room would be on her. As she reached for a glass of water, someone bumped her arm. A steaming cup of coffee spilled across her lap, scalding her skin. Gasps echoed, followed by hushed laughter from a few smug faces. To them, she was just an assistant, a nobody who didn't belong in their world. The sharp sting of the burn was nothing compared to the humiliation that settled in her chest. They smirked, whispered, and waited for her to break down. But she didn't. She stood there, her hands trembling slightly, yet her eyes held something unexpected calm, almost unshaken. Before she could excuse herself, the door swung open. The CEO walked in, commanding silence with every step. His gaze swept the room until it landed on her. The laughter died instantly. Everyone straightened in their seats, confused by the sudden shift in his expression. Then, in a voice that left no room for doubt, he said something that froze the room in stunned silence. "Why is my wife standing here like this?" The smirks disappeared. The coffee, the whispers, the arrogant soul of it suddenly felt dangerous. The executives exchanged panicked glances, realizing they had just crossed a line they could never erase, and that was only the beginning. Because what the CEO did next, no one in that room was prepared for. The room felt colder after his words, like the air had been sucked out completely. Nobody dared to move. The woman lowered her eyes, not saying a word, while the CEO walked toward her with a calmness that felt more dangerous than anger. He gently pulled out a chair for her and said softly, "Sit." The executives shifted uncomfortably, their confidence now crumbling under the weight of something they didn't understand. No one had ever seen him like this before. The CEO was known for being distant, focused only on numbers and strategy, rarely showing emotion. But now, there was something different in his tone, quiet authority that carried a warning. He glanced around the table, and for the first time, the people who thought they ran the room felt small. The woman sat down, her hands resting in her lap. The faint redness from the coffee burned still visible. But what caught everyone off guard was her silence. She wasn't crying, she wasn't angry. She just sat there, composed, like someone who knew far more than they assumed. The executives exchanged uneasy looks, each one trying to piece together what this meant. Who was she really? And why hadn't anyone known she was the CEO's wife? Whispers started to form in their minds. Was she here to observe? Was this some kind of test? Or worse, had they just ruined their careers in a single moment of arrogance? The CEO didn't answer their unspoken questions. He simply placed a folder on the table and opened it slowly, the sound of paper sliding breaking the silence. His eyes moved from the papers to the faces around him, then back to his wife. And then, with a faint smile that no one could read, he said, "Let's begin." The room stayed painfully quiet as the CEO flipped through the folder, his face giving nothing away. Each executive tried to look composed, but their minds were racing. They all knew how this company worked, power ruled, and mistakes were rarely forgiven. But this was something none of them had planned for. The woman sat silently beside him, her expression calm, almost unreadable. Some of them were now remembering the laughter, the whispers, the way they had brushed her off like she didn't belong. Regret was already creeping in, but it was too late to take anything back. Finally, the CEO spoke, his tone steady but sharp. "I asked her to be here for a reason," he said, not looking up from the papers. "Today's meeting will decide the future of this company. And I wanted someone I trust completely to see everything." His words sank deep, each syllable carrying a weight they couldn't ignore. If she was here to observe, then everything they said, every decision they made could either save them or destroy them. Across the table, a man in a gray suit cleared his throat nervously. He had been the loudest voice earlier, mocking her with a smirk when the coffee spilled. Now, his hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie. Others avoided eye contact, their confidence shattered. Meanwhile, the woman's thoughts drifted back. To that moment, the coffee burning her skin, the laughter in the room. She had stayed silent because she knew who she was, and soon they would know too. But this wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about loyalty, respect, and secrets that had been buried too long. The CEO closed the folder and looked up, his eyes locking on the man in the gray suit. "Why don't you start?" he said calmly. The man swallowed hard. Everyone leaned in because what he was about to say could change everything, and deep down, they all felt that this meeting was no longer about numbers. It was about survival. The man in the gray suit stood slowly, his palms slick with sweat. Every eye was on him, and for the first time, he wished the room would swallow him whole. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked, barely louder than a whisper. We've been reviewing the quarterly numbers," he began, fumbling with the papers in front of him. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by visible panic. The CEO leaned back in his chair, his arm resting casually on the woman's seat, as if daring anyone to forget who she was. The tension in the room was unbearable. Each executive could feel the weight of their earlier actions pressing down on them. They remembered every smirk, every whispered word. Now it all felt like a ticking bomb. The woman sat quietly, her gaze moving slowly across the faces that had judged her. There was no anger in her eyes, just something deeper, something that made their stomachs knot as the man continued his shaky report. The CEO's sharp questions cut through the silence like a blade. "Why are the projections inconsistent?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with something dangerous. "Who signed off on this strategy?" Each question felt like a trap, and no one wanted to be the one who fell into it. The executives exchanged nervous glances, their hierarchy crumbling in real time. The man stammered again, searching for excuses, but the CEO's stare held him frozen. The woman reached for a pen, scribbling something on a notepad, and passed it silently to her husband. He read it, his jaw tightening ever so slightly before. He looked back at the table. The room felt like a storm was brewing. Everyone knew something was coming, something big. The CEO placed the note down slowly and said, "I think it's time we talk about the truth." Every heartbeat in the room seemed louder than the last. No one moved. No one breathed. And then, without warning, the CEO pushed back his chair and stood up. The air turned electric. What he was about to reveal would change everything. The CEO's chair scraped against the polished floor as he rose, his expression unreadable. Everyone braced for impact, expecting anger, expecting consequences. But instead of yelling, he calmly walked to the head of the table and picked up a sleek black folder no one had noticed before. His fingers tapped it once, twice, the sound echoing in the silent room. "This," he said, his voice steady, "is what you've all been hiding from me." The executives stiffened. Hidden. Their minds raced, scrambling through recent projects and reports. The man in the gray suit nearly dropped his pen, his face draining of color. The CEO opened the folder and revealed a stack of confidential documents, figures, emails, signatures that didn't belong. The kind of evidence that could end careers. The woman sat still, but her eyes followed every move. She had known about this. That much was clear now. Suddenly, everything made sense, the way she had stayed calm when the coffee spilled. The way she had watched them with quiet intensity. She wasn't just here to observe a meeting. She was here to witness the fallout of something much bigger. "You thought no one would notice." The CEO continued, pacing slowly, his voice low and deliberate. You thought you could manipulate numbers, bury losses, and keep your bonuses. Gasps escaped around the table, but no one dared to speak. Gaze locked on two executives sitting side by side, and they froze like deer in headlights. Then came the twist no one saw coming. He placed the folder in front of his wife and said, "You already know what to do." The room erupted in whispers, shock spreading like wildfire. Why her? What power did she hold? And why did it feel like she wasn't just the CEO's wife, but someone far more dangerous? The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone knew what happened next would either save them or destroy them. And the woman who once seemed invisible now held all the power. The room held its breath as the CEO's wife slowly stood, the folder in her hands. Her calm demeanor sent shivers down every spine. She looked at the faces that had mocked her just an hour ago and spoke for the first time, her voice soft but commanding. "You see, I didn't come here to embarrass anyone," she said, glancing at the damning documents. "I came here to give you a chance." A ripple of confusion spread across the table. A chance. What did that mean? The CEO watched silently, letting her take control, his trust in her unquestionable. She laid out the papers one by one, revealing fraudulent approvals, hidden losses, and signatures from the very people now avoiding her gaze. "You didn't just hurt the company," she continued. "You put thousands of jobs at risk." Her tone sharpened, every word cutting deeper than the last. Then she delivered the blow no one was ready for. "As of this moment, you're all out," she said, sliding a stack of termination letters across the table. Gasps filled the room. Executives who once ruled with arrogance now sat frozen, their power stripped away in seconds. But the twist wasn't over. She turned to her husband with a faint smile. "I told you I'd clean this up," she whispered, then faced the stunned board. "Because as of today, I'm not just his wife, I'm your new CEO." The shock was absolute. Chairs scraped back, whispers erupted, and for a moment, no one knew what to do. The woman they underestimated had not only uncovered their secrets, but claimed the throne they all wanted. The CEO placed his hand on her shoulder and said, calmly, "Let's rebuild this company together." And in that instant, everyone realized the truth. Underestimating her had been the most expensive mistake of their lives. The room remained silent, heavy with the weight of what had just happened. The woman who once seemed invisible now stood. At the center of everything, her presence commanding respect like no one else in that room ever had. The executives, still reeling from the shock, slowly gathered their belongings in defeat. Some tried to plead, their voices trembling, but she didn't flinch. "It's done," she said softly. "We're moving forward." Her husband, the former sole leader, stood beside her with pride, not anger. He wasn't losing power. He was sharing it with the only person he trusted completely. Together, they had planned this moment for months, aware of the corruption silently eating away at the company. What happened with the coffee spill only made things clearer how these people treated others when they thought no one was watching. As the last chair scraped against the floor, she looked at the empty table and took a deep breath. "This company is more than numbers," she said, her voice echoing in the now quiet room. "It's about people. And that's how we'll win back trust." Her words weren't for the fallen executives. They were for the future. Over the next few weeks, she rebuilt everything: new teams, honest leaders, and policies that valued integrity over greed. Employees who once felt invisible now had a voice, and the company's culture shifted dramatically. Clients returned, investors trusted again, and within a year, the company was stronger than ever. But the story didn't just end in a boardroom. It became a reminder: never judge someone by their appearance, and never underestimate kindness for weakness. The simple woman who walked into that meeting underestimated became the CEO who changed everything. And as she walked out of the building that day, hand in hand with her husband, she knew one thing for sure: true power isn't about titles, it's about character.